All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Fernanda Guimaraes. I'll be hosting this session today. We'll be talking about neuro-inclusive learning and harnessing the power of digital tools through innovation and inclusion. Our presenters today are Sarah Boyer and Alexandra Moran. I just wanted to let you guys know if you need or want captioning, you can select show captions in the bottom of the bottom of your Zoom page, and you can also select the little arrow on the side and view the full transcript of this presentation. So I don't want to waste any more time. I'll turn it over to Sarah and Alexandra.
Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. Thank you all so much for joining our presentation this morning. We will be discussing, as Fernanda said, neuro-inclusive learning and how we can harness the tools of digital tools and innovation through innovation and inclusion. So we will kind of jump in and get started. So here's a little roadmap of our presentation so that you can see what is in store for you all today. So Sarah and I will start by introducing ourselves so you can get to know us a little bit better as your presenters. We'll go over the purpose and goals of our presentation, and then we'll follow up with some learning objectives as well as tools and resources that are not only beneficial at the K through 12 level, but also beneficial at the collegiate level. Then we'll wrap it up, and then we will have a Q&A just in case you all have any questions. If you all do have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to put them in the chat. And then Sarah and I will get to them at the end of the presentation during our Q&A segment. All right, so here's just a little bit about myself. My name is Alexandra Moran. My pronouns are she, her. I'm currently a learning specialist at the University of Colorado, Boulder. For my education, I went to Oregon State University for undergrad. I graduated in 2019, and then I received my master's from the University of Florida in 2022. As far as my professional career, I started out as an assistant learning specialist at Oregon State. I was an assistant learning specialist also at the University of Florida. I was a learning specialist at the university or at Louisiana State University for about a year and a half. And then I have been at the University of Colorado Boulder since August of 2023. My contact information is listed above, but it will be at the end of this presentation if you'd like to reach out to continue a conversation. And then I will turn it over to Sarah.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Boyer. My pronouns are she, her, and I am an academic support intern for the University of Colorado Boulder. I recently finished my undergrad last May here at CU. I received a BA in psychology with a minor in business and a certificate in public health. So far in my professional career journey, I've gotten the opportunity to stay in Boulder this past year to work as the student-athlete academic support services intern, alongside my amazing coworker, Alex, and an awesome academic team. So, shall we get started? The purpose and goals of our presentation today, and what we want you to have in mind throughout our time together, is how we can foster a fair educational environment where all students can thrive without promoting academic dishonesty. We will emphasize the need for the universal design of learning to accommodate students with learning differences, especially students with ADHD, through varying teaching methods. As we raise awareness of the challenges we face, we want to create an inclusive environment for all to be successful. An estimated 5.8% of college students have an ADHD diagnosis. So let us promote, encourage, expand your knowledge, open you to more opportunities, and highlight where we are at in this changing world. So here's an overview of our learning objectives that will help guide our presentation today. Starting with, what is ADHD? ADHD as a comorbidity, the metaverse in ADHD, expectations versus reality, academic metaverse barriers, and the universal design of learning, and planning for success. Starting with learning objective 1. What is ADHD? We cannot come up with creative means to help students with ADHD if we do not fully understand how and who it impacts. We may hear it all the time, we may reference it, but we may not fully understand what ADHD is or stands for. ADHD is attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. It can be characterized by consistent patterns of inattention, impulsivity, or hyperactivity. In some students, ADHD may consist of a combination of these three factors. The overall concept is how it affects the student's daily tasks, function, and development. Students with ADHD may struggle and have a hard time staying focused, organization skills, time management, impulse control, and very present challenges with their academics. As shown on the slide, some statistics with ADHD diagnosis rates show males are more likely to be diagnosed versus females. This is due to the differences in symptom presentation. Males tend to show more hyperactivity symptoms, while females tend to be a little more inattentive. From a self-reported survey, demographics listed white college students as having one of the highest ADHD diagnostics rates. When presenting this information and statistics surrounding ADHD, we need to remember that it can be hard to fully get accurate data. Estimates are usually proposed because many people choose to not disclose their information. Some college students may choose to not get tested or are unaware. Overall, ADHD is a term you will hear a lot. The biggest idea you should take away is the impact it has on many people around us.
Our second learning objective is that ADHD is usually a comorbidity. So for those of you folks who do not know, a comorbidity is when there are two or more medical conditions present in an individual. Although there are more disorders or diagnoses that an individual with ADHD can have, the ones listed on the screen are the most common. And ADHD really loves company. So since ADHD is a neurodivergent disorder, it can often be diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, which is another neurodivergent disorder under the neurodivergency umbrella. And likewise, students who have autism spectrum disorder can also be diagnosed with ADHD. So approximately 20 to 50% of the individuals that do have an ADHD diagnosis also have an autism spectrum disorder diagnosis as well. As far as the diagnostic rate for other disorders, and I know this one is a huge range, 10 to 92% of individuals with ADHD can have a learning disorder as well. So that's why it's really important, especially when we're working in education, to be mindful and aware of where our students are at or if they're exhibiting any other symptoms outside of their ADHD diagnosis. In addition, there can be mental health diagnoses that are present with ADHD diagnosis. So 12 to 50% of ADHDers can also be diagnosed with a major depressive disorder, which is 5 times higher than our youth that do not have an ADHD diagnosis. The scale can also be a little bit larger with an anxiety diagnosis as well. So approximately 15 to 35% of individuals with ADHD also have an anxiety disorder too. And the last comorbid disorder that is listed on our presentation is a conduct disorder or oppositional defiant disorder, also known as ODD, which has a really high rate of 30 to 50%. So individuals that do have ADHD definitely fit the diagnosis for ODD or conduct disorder. So although these are the most common comorbidities that we see among students, or even just all individuals, it can be adults too, that are diagnosed with ADHD, there are 2 other comorbidities that are common and they do deserve to be mentioned. So individuals with ADHD may also have bipolar disorder or tic disorder such as Tourette's. The data was lacking on a percentage scale of prevalence with these comorbidities amongst people with ADHD, but it is really important to be mindful, especially if you are at the collegiate level where bipolar disorder starts to become more present in individuals. Our third learning objective is the importance of using the metaverse with students with ADHD. So online learning platforms can be highly beneficial for students that have ADHD. From my background experience working with college athletes, you can definitely see the change when students are in the classroom versus when they're online. They can just kind of sustain focus a little bit more in that online learning environment. Some students can have a really challenging time in the classroom due to excessive distractions. In K through 12, you definitely notice these, especially the males who are more hyperactive, They are the ones who are like the class clown or usually burst out a little bit more. So it can definitely be challenging for them to be in a classroom, or other external noises can also disengage students from their learning, which can be really hard for them to learn some crucial and fundamental steps. It may definitely be easier for students to pursue learning via an online platform that can enhance their absorption of information while also keeping up with modern academic trends. The more accessibility that we do have for students with ADHD increases inclusivity for students with ADHD or students that may have another diagnosis that can definitely make learning in a classroom challenging for them. So although there are some cons with being strictly online, such as students not being able to socialize with their peers, the goal of incorporating the metaverse or virtual learning is to not take them away from the classroom, but to be able to find personalized tools that enhance their classroom learning.
Now let's talk about the expectations and realities of the metaverse. More so, the challenges we observe and the opportunities we can take, especially surrounding our students with ADHD. There are always going to be stigmas and different perceptions on how we may view the metaverse and its use. Challenges of using online learning and platforms can create a world of endless possibilities. As we may know, the internet and technology can be an outlet of unimaginable resources. This can be good or bad. Focusing on school resources and online learning, students with ADHD can find it difficult, again, to engage with certain material, and it can be very hard to navigate, and there may be no structure at all. This leads us to students who either have experience with in-person classes and transition to online, or vice versa, also doing all online and asynchronous classes. With the changing society and generation, many faculty, professors, staff, and others may not have the awareness or understanding that some of our students diagnosed with a learning disability are having a hard time in their class. Not to put any blame on anyone, but this allows us to support each other and share our knowledge so we can be as successful as we can in helping ourselves and our students. With the metaverse, it can create more flexibility for students. Students may feel like they have more control in their online learning environments, allowing more accessibility for course resources and materials right on their computer. We can use the metaverse to promote and encourage education on how to help students with learning disabilities, especially ADHD.
All right, and now we're going to move on to learning objective 5. So the academic metaverse barriers and the universal design of learning. For all my educators in the room, you know that universal design of learning is shortened to UDL, so that's what I will be using for the remainder of this slide as well as the next one. So the universal design of learning can definitely break down barriers for students with ADHD. So it is extremely important for all of us to be aware that our students have intersecting identities that make us, or that make them who they are, but we also have intersecting identities that make us who we are, and it influences our daily lives. That's why it's really important to make sure that we are meeting our students where they are at so that they can have the support that they need to be successful. Changing an instructional design framework can allow for people to receive instruction in ways that are beneficial for them. You may have students that like to learn visually or auditorily or by also doing, so kinesthetic learners. And so making sure that we're able to change the instructions for them or assignments for them will really help them be beneficial in their learning. As educators, it is extremely important for us to meet our students where they are at so that we can accommodate their unique learning styles. So the UDL is only the beginning, and there is so much to unpack, but for now we need to have an open mindset to embrace our academic metaverse. The tools that are coming out are so helpful and so beneficial that we're able to really support students that do have ADHD or other learning diagnoses. We just have to make sure that we change the framework so that they can be set up for success.
And bringing us to our last learning objective, planning for success. As we slowly transition out of what the academic metaverse holds for the students with ADHD, we need to remember some good practices. Meet students where they're at. Everyone is different, everyone is unique. Some days can be tough. We may be frustrated or burnt out, let's remember some patience. In the end, we want to find a solution. Take a break and come back to the problem. Expanding your knowledge and allowing yourself to learn more about ADHD or learning disabilities is great. One thing I always remind myself is to know when your role ends and another person's begins. You do not need to solve everyone's situation. Asking for help is okay. There are so many resources online, on campus, among your peers. We should use them. And if we don't know where they may be or what, we should ask. You may already be thinking, what resources are out there? Well, let us guide you through some of our learning resources we have found to be helpful while keeping up with the fast-changing times within the metaverse. As a reminder, some of these resources are new to us, and some are still in the works of becoming great and more widely used. Go into this part with an open mind and write down some of these platforms that may catch your eye. Starting off with common accommodations through disability services for students with ADHD. Listed here are common accommodations utilized across many colleges. This is our experience with CU and what resources we have found to help our students with learning disabilities. The most common accommodation for students with ADHD is extended time. The average time granted for an extension is 1.5 times during a testing period. But if they have a second diagnosis, they can be granted additional time or double. Other accommodations may include DRE, distraction reduced environment, which means taking exams in more of a secluded or private environment. Note takers may be seen as another student, teaching assistant, or peer who shares the notes for the class, and breaks during exams and quizzes. The majority of the time, the process involves submitting documentation through accommodations portal that your school should have. Professors are usually on top of their students about getting their accommodations as soon as class begins, but it is always good to check in with your students and ask about accommodations.
All right, before I click to this next slide, I know this is a controversial topic, so we are going to talk about ChatGPT. So we sometimes hate to see it, but we really love to use it because it can definitely be beneficial. So this is a prompt for an assignment. As you can see, it's really long. There are a lot of words. It's pretty lengthy. This is an assignment that some people may see at CU Boulder. They also may see it at, honestly, any university that you are at. And so it can be confusing for a prompt to be this long, especially for someone who has an attentive ADHD, hyperactive, or even a combination of the two. It can be really easy for them to gloss over and miss out on important assignment details. So even looking at this myself, I'm overwhelmed. There's so much to look at. There's so many questions and parameters. And if it's overwhelming for me, it can definitely be overwhelming for other individuals who do have ADHD or a learning disability that can impact their learning. So what I did was I took this prompt and I plugged it into ChatGPT and I asked them to simplify it. It's more concise. There are areas that are bolded, and it gives everything that the assignment was asking for students to do. It's just more concise and easier for them to read. So although we do not want our students to plug it in and ask them for an answer, it can definitely be helpful with absorbing what the prompt is asking them to do. Bolded words are definitely something that is really important. It catches your eye, it draws your attention to it, and makes you be aware of what needs to be in the assignment. So ChatGPT is definitely getting a lot of bad rep, as in some ways it should be because students are doing it for academic integrity violations. But it can also be very important for educators to break down assignments so that we can do a universal design of learning framework to help support all of the students in our classes. And even though I didn't take it to the next step of asking ChatGPT to simplify this prompt, I'm sure that it would cut it down even more if necessary. There are ways that we can use ChatGPT for good so that we can help support our students who may not learn at the same level as their peers or may need the playing field level so that they can be academically successful. Before you completely ban ChatGPT from your toolbox, please see if you can use it to help further educate your students in ways that best support them to grasp the information. I know that as a learning specialist, some of what we do is break down assignments so that they're easier for students, but we may not always have the time. And so this can definitely be a good resource so that they're getting what they need out of an assignment, while also making sure that they are staying academic integrity inclined, and continuing to do their own coursework. The next software that is really important that I discovered while creating this presentation is Evernote. So Evernote is a note-taking platform that allows for students to do a variety of awesome things on it. So this is something that can be downloaded to their desktops, or they can even have the application on their phone. It is definitely a free resource with limitations, but if students feel inclined, they can upgrade it so that they can have more notes. I believe you get 50 notes per month. So unless students are overgoing the 50 notes per month, I believe that the free version will definitely be okay. It allows for students to keep all their notes in one place, which can also help them with planning, which is definitely important, especially for students with ADHD who may forget things that they have to do. So some of the awesome things that this platform allows you to do is doing to-do lists, daily, weekly, or monthly planners, as well as project overviews for school. They can also take basic notes on this as well. So if they're in class and need to come back and reference something, Evernote is definitely a great resource. Since ADHD is also a comorbidity, it allows them to track their mood as well as a daily mental health journal that can be used with practitioners on campus or in schools such as a counselor or therapist. As Sarah mentioned earlier, it is extremely important to know where your role starts and where your role ends. And so Evernote is a great tool to use academically, but it can also be beneficial if students do need to go see someone else.
Moving on to our next resource, or tips, we're going to talk about Zoom. Now, I don't want to assume, but I would have guessed that we've all had our experiences with Zoom. Some good, maybe a few bad, and probably some very frustrating moments of not getting the computer to work. Overall, we know Zoom. But do we know how Zoom can be hard for students with ADHD? Zoom can be a great way to hold classes and meetings. Again, we need to be mindful of our students who may not look at Zoom the way we do. Shown on the screen are some tips and features Zoom has to be more accommodating. Closed captioning, as maybe some of you are using right now or have, larger fonts on the screen, and different backgrounds to create high contrast. These simple features and edits can really make a difference. Looking at a screen for a while can make us zone out. Online lectures have lots of words, but not a lot of visuals, can make students feel overwhelmed and lose focus. This allows us to use these small little tools and adjust it so we can be more inclusive and accommodating for our students with learning disabilities. Moving on to another resource called Glean. Glean can be described in one sentence as accommodations right at your fingertips. Glean is an online platform that allows you to record lectures as audio. This is super helpful if the professor doesn't record an online class. Or if you are in a live lecture, you can receive a transcript by pressing a button to record right from your fingertips. Notes and key information can be bookmarked and flagged as a way to return if there has been a lapse in concentration. There are different lighting modes to reduce cognitive overload. Through Glean, you can skip the process of annoying your professor or accommodations liaison for your notes by a note taker. Glean's feature can take and store notes for you. The overall message is that students can struggle to retain information, especially if you have a professor or lecture that goes at a fast pace. Critical information is stored and accessible right on this platform. There are so many resources out there, and more are being made to try and help with the movement of online learning. As seen on this slide are other resources we have found that can be useful for yourself or your students. Now, some of these I personally haven't gotten the time to dive into their features and functions, but the overall goal is to provide you with tools that you can use and test out. To highlight a few on this list, Todoist is an app that allows you to organize your to-dos and keep track of your week-to-week or daily tasks. As many of the other apps we kind of mentioned have the similar feature. This has just everything in one place and can be easily accessible on your phone. Many students with ADHD can become overwhelmed with long lists. This can be helpful to make short daily lists of things to do, and they can have everything right at their fingertips. Summary was recently discovered by one of our coworkers. It is a very new platform to the metaverse, but the overarching goal of this platform is to take a long text of reading or paper and shorten it into moving a more manageable text, highlighting key bullet points. As this, again, is another AI tool, the purpose is to help students break down longer text faster. Professors can assign multiple readings daily, which can be very overwhelming for students. This can give students a resource to help get a summary and bullet points of the main topics. Giving them a quick summary is better than the student not trying to read at all. Finally, we have our favorite, the fidget toys. Now, some of you may think these are pointless or maybe more of a distraction than ever, but in reality, many of our students can benefit from having a small object to hold on to. Fidget toys can increase focus and attention, reduce impulsivity, and a positive outlet for hyperactivity. From this slide, a few questions I want you to ask yourself. What resources have I been using that have worked? What resources have I used that haven't really worked? And what resources presented today do I want to try? Feel free to ask us again at the end to go back to any of these resources or jot down a few you may want to look into. Reflecting on this process and incorporating new tools can help our students and ourselves be successful.
Alrighty, so maybe it was nerves, but Sarah and I spoke a little quicker during our presentation. So we're going to dive into our wrap up a little bit. So it's really important to remember that we are all a part of a rapidly changing society, especially within the metaverse. Online learning, especially because of COVID, has definitely changed and has definitely become more accessible for individuals. It's really important that we maintain patience, we continue to practice our skills, and we choose to understand our students because it can benefit all of us. It can benefit your colleagues, your coworkers, and your students as well, who are the most important part of this whole presentation. Also remember, it definitely takes a lot of trial and error. It takes so much time to figure out and to find a solution that works for everybody. Something that works for one of your students may not work for all of your students. So again, that's why it's so important to make sure you're meeting your students where you're at or where they're at so that they can be academically successful. Celebrate everyone's uniqueness. We're all unique learners. We all educate in our own way. There's something so special about every one of us. So it's important that we continue to champion and celebrate every little win that everybody has. And remember, learning can be really hard. So it's important to build confidence and use positive affirmations, especially when you're working with a student who may be struggling or may have challenges or may feel like they don't even deserve to learn due to other events happening in their life. So building confidence is such an easy step that you can take. All right, so now we're going to dive into our Q&A. Does anybody have any questions?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
When you have a student that, you might want to recommend them to go through screening and testing, what are good ways you can approach them and that without, pointing out their challenges and struggles? Because we all have dealt with students where we were like, it would be beneficial for them to go through it to know if there are any diagnoses there, but we don't want to put them in a spot where they feel uncomfortable.
Oh, Fernanda, absolutely. I think testing for some can definitely be a really sensitive topic because the word test, I mean, like it's scary. Evaluation is also scary. I think one thing that can be really beneficial in a tool that I use when working with my students is I ask them if they notice any challenges in their, like, hey, what do you struggle with? Hey, this and this. And then it kind of opens up a dialect. Obviously, rapport is huge for working through that situation with any student. But I think just being very mindful, being very comforting, and just, again, meeting the student where they're at. Sometimes students maybe think that their academic abilities are higher than they really are, or they may think that they're lower than they really are. And so just asking them questions is the most important thing to do. And then if you do have a challenging time with that process for yourself personally, I definitely believe you can go to like your supervisor, or I mean, I know at LSU it's Carly and Dr. Bodak, and so you can definitely use your resources such as them to make sure that you can help support the student. So it's an uncomfortable conversation for sure sometimes, but if you go at it with grace, I think only good things can come with it.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And just to be as inclusive as possible as well, if you do have a question that you're not comfortable asking, mine and Sarah's contact information will be at the end of this presentation as well. If there are no more questions, we're gonna skip ahead. So thank you, especially from Chip the Buffalo. We didn't throw Ralphie on here, but thank you all so much for attending and joining our presentation. Sarah, do you want to wrap it up at all?
Yeah, again, thank you for taking the time out of your Friday morning to come and join us. Again, the overall message we want you guys to take away is be open-minded. There's always opportunities to learn, and we need to be aware kind of everyone's different situations, and especially with the changing times in the academic metaverse.
Right, and then here are references, and then here's our contact information. So thank you so much for taking the time, and we really appreciate it. And then Fernanda, that we do have the slide at the end. So whenever everybody's ready, we'll give everybody a couple minutes to jot this down, and then I will go to the next slide.
Can you guys see the sharing screen?
Can you all see it still? Okay.
All right. So if you guys can take some time, please, to just fill out the evaluation survey. This is the QR code. It was also sent to your email. So thank you, Alexandra and Sarah. That was so amazing. Thank you for the tools. I'm definitely going to use that list of resources that you guys provided that I didn't really know existed. So that was so helpful. Thank you so much. As you guys can see in the chat, a lot of people enjoyed the presentation, so thank you. Do you have another slide, Alex?
Do you just see the educational one? Like, do you see your QR code, Fernanda? We integrated it into our presentation.
Oh, perfect.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So, oh, there it is. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you all.